There we go.
All right. Welcome to the Helm developer stand-up. It's March 22nd, 2018. Let's see, as far as announcements, we had a 2.8.2 go out release this week. Other than that, I'm not sure of any other announcements. Does anybody have anything else? Okay, looks like we have a couple new people on. So the format is usually we'll go through and do quick stand-ups by the Helm core team, then have any sort of discussion after that. And anybody who is not a core maintainer, feel free to bring up anything during that as well. Today we're going to try to go through stand-ups pretty quick so we can talk about some Helm 3 stuff too. So we'll jump right in. And Fisher, you want to get us started with stand-ups?
Yeah, I don't have anything really to report. I'm just triaging issues, one specific issue in Helm. Got a reproducible case by some people over at Microsoft about Helm rollback. So that's it really for this week. Carry on to Nick.
Hey guys, good morning. So last week mostly spent the time around looking at the Helm 3 design proposal. Apart from that, I went over the issue queue a little bit and responded to stuff, but not much else. And I will pass it on to Farina.
The Helm 3 design proposal, which we'll discuss later, I reviewed it and have chatted with folks on it. So we can get to that. I'm done, and I'll pass it off to Adnan. Have you gone?
Do you have user story stuff?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. That's right. The user stories that we've been working on and that are built on the user profiles have also been merged to the Helm community repo. And I'll pass it off to Adnan.
Hey, everyone. So I've not been doing much apart from reviewing the proposal that's been going around and the user stories and other stuff. And also on the chart side, reviewing some charts here and there. So I'll pass it on to, let's see who hasn't gone. Fisher, have you gone?
Yeah, I'll hot potato that off to Taylor.
I was the issue Sherpa this week, merged or reviewed a handful of PRs. I have one more in flight that I need to do today. There's one issue in the issue queue about reuse values and its intended behavior, and in all honesty, I do not know very much about that little section and corner of Helm. So if there's somebody who does and wants to go throw in some feedback in there about whether or not that's intended, or if there's any behavior that's wrong there and would be recognized as a bug, that would be helpful. And then, yeah, just a few PRs. There's a couple of PRs that I reviewed that need a second one. If someone could do it, Fisher, I'll trade with you since I have to review one that you reviewed. So, and then, yeah, that's it. So I'll pass it on to, let's see, Nick, did you go?
I did.
Dang it, gosh, I'm having such a hard time keeping track of everyone. Justin, I see Justin.
That was it. I've done nothing. I've been out for over a week and traveling and stuff. I just got back Tuesday, or back to work Tuesday. So yeah, I've been keeping up with the proposal, voted, all that good stuff, but trying to get back in the loop. So I think that's it, right?
I still haven't gone.
Yep, pleasure.
Oh, sorry, but.
Yeah, so other than some minor work on the main repo, I haven't done any big bug fixes or anything. I've done some PRs and tried to fix up the owner's file given the emeritus stuff, which I realized I'd forgotten to do after we passed all that. The main thing I've been doing this week is trying to wrangle in and keep the Helm 3 proposal going. So I've spent lots of time trying to address comments and move things along. Thank you all very much for the dozens and dozens of comments on that. I feel like we've managed to make a lot of progress on that one. So that's it for me, and kind of my plan for the next week is to keep moving all of this stuff along, the user stories, the proposals, and things like that.
All right, great. Does anybody have any discussion topics other than the Helm 3?
I threw an issue in asking for comments on a suggested best practice. Let me paste it in the chat here. Basically, I'm writing up network best practices following on from Helm Summit. And as I was working my way through it, I realized that the way I had originally proposed to do it had a couple of downsides, and a better way to do it might actually be to split part of it off actually into a separate Helm chart. So if people have a minute and can take a look at that and give me some feedback, that'd be great.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
I think before going into the proposal, we should do Farina should do a very quick overview of the outcome of the user story stuff and where it stands and what we can still use help on.
Great, a voluntold discussion.
Love those. All right. I'm just a sec while I go find that document. So these were Helm v3 user stories. They were emailed out to lists. I'll drop them into chat here. This was a set of user stories that we'd been collecting. I think Matt and Matt, that narrows it down here. Adam and some folks have all been collecting some of these. A bunch of them came out of conversations with people using Helm. They came out of the Helm Summit. This is just an initial set, I would say. There's going to definitely be more. And in fact, this morning I was sharing a new one with Matt Butcher to narrow down. But this here is an initial set of user stories, and they're all targeted around the user profiles we have. And those user profiles, of course, are in priority order. So this gives us kind of this little bit of direction on, what are we trying to do and for whom, and in some cases for what reasons, like are we trying to secure something down. This is just a start, and pull requests are welcome.
All right, and then for the proposal, do you want to kick us off, Butcher?
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to drop the link into the proposal as in its current working draft form. So we've been using HackMD as a way of tracking this document, which has been a nice tool for us, though the commenting system is a little hard to use at times. So what I was planning on doing was just kind of reading through the bullet summary at the top, and then letting people, pun intended there, letting people kind of delve in to whatever segments we want to. But the summary is, in this design proposal, what we're suggesting is that Helm 3, we build a client-oriented reference implementation, speccing out sections sufficiently so that CRD controller versions can be set up as well. But Tiller is gone in the current proposal. Charts are updated with a couple of new features. Chart.yaml has been changed to something closer to the application CRD direction that people are going. So there's kind of an outline of how things would move from the old chart YAML format to a new one in there. Again, everything's working draft at this point, right? We've included the notion of overlays as a way of overlaying one template file over another, basically replacing template files. I think there's a link in there now to where that overlay terminology comes from and how it works. There's a definition of library charts in there, and there's a definition of an extension directory inside of charts in which certain extensions can be stored, okay? Helm is going to switch to more like an event emitter handler kind of model internally and expose lifecycle events so that an embedded Lua scripting environment, which is our current target here, would be able to react to particular events during the lifecycle. And that would be the way that we would allow chart developers to extend some of the things they want to be able to do, like say run through a JSON engine or script up a pre-install hook or something like that. And these scripts would end up being stored in the charts. State would be maintained.
Can I inject a comment there?
Hang on, okay.
Just for some background on that, because I know there's been a lot of questions around the Lua environment thing. So the thought behind that was, we wanted to be able to provide some sort of scripting because for the lifecycle event hooks, it's been a pretty big request of ours. but we don't really necessarily want to switch away from Go because then we have to re-implement all the client library stuff. So this was a way of having some sort of scripting enabled, because you can't really script in Go. You generate a binary and it's very statically typed. And so this was a way of coming up with like a happy medium between the two. Lua is designed to be embedded into other programming languages, so that seemed like the best solution there. So that's kind of the decision behind that.
Great. Yeah.
Did you look at alternatives to Lua? Like, I know some folks at Google were asking me about Skylark yesterday. Which
we didn't look into Skylark. I've played with it a little bit. Another one we've played with is JavaScript. In another project, we actually played around with embedding V8 in another language, as well as there was another library that actually re-implemented a lot of JavaScript. It wasn't E6 yet, it was all the E5 stuff, but they actually re-implemented all that in Go, and we played with that a little bit. It had some limitations though, where we were just going to be chasing support for JavaScript functionality for that. So that's kind of why we didn't go with that. And since Lua is designed for that, that's just kind of what we were leaning towards.
Yeah, and Lua is in the top 20 programming languages. It's been around for a long enough time that there's some general familiarity with it, even though it's nowhere near JavaScript or PHP or Perl or Python, but those were not languages that turned out to be attractive options when we looked at them.
And for what it's worth, there is more than one library we can import today that implements Lua for us in Go, rather than having to deal with all of the other tool chains to deal with all the other cross-platform compatibilities to build Helm binaries. The thing that caught me about Lua was it was the one that gave us scripting with the least pain for us to manage and build.
Yeah, and a nice, easy sandbox.
Yeah, there's two different implementations. I'll just say this, and then I'll shut up and let you finish your overview. Sorry for derailing. There's two different implementations of Lua in Go. One of them actually embeds the C library in there, and there's another one that actually re-implements everything, and they're both very well supported. So,
yeah, fairly active for years now. Yeah. Okay. So one of the main issues we wanted to make sure that we could still handle adequately was if two different developers are using, or two different operators are using Helm at the same time, there would be a common in-cluster artifact that would manage the versioning of those things. So we still have the notion of a release object, and we've split that into the notion of a release object and the notion of a release version object, so that they're separately queryable. And you can look at the spec or the proposal for that. So we do still have we do have what are now two CRDs instead of storing that in a config map or secret. There's the release CRD and the release version CRD. Resources that are created by hooks, actually this one may not be. Currently, the proposal is that resources that are created by hooks will now be managed instead of being unmanaged, or optionally managed instead of being unmanaged. For pull-based DevOps workflows, a new Helm controller project is sort of defined in one of the appendices, though it's not part of the core proposal. There's a part of the proposal suggests that we also have a Lua runtime that would allow you to develop plugins as Lua, and you can look at the spec, but basically this would augment the current plugin system to allow Lua-based plugins to run in a sandboxed environment inside of Helm. Matt Farina and I talked about that a little bit this morning, so that part's a little more in flux than some of the others. And then finally, we're going to try and bump up the support for a Helm chart repository by also including a push verb. So you'd be able to push things in, and Josh, who's on this, Josh is on this call. He and I have talked a little bit about whether the chart museum team would be willing to take the lead on defining sort of the semantics behind how this would work. But we would like to be able to make it standardized so that there's a way to do a Helm chart or Helm repo push in addition to the fetch and pull kinds of verbs that we have. So those are the main aspects of the proposal. The proposal's a little on the massive side. There are currently 3 big appendices on there that'll explain some of the rationale behind various decisions that we made when trying to narrow things down. But with that link, you should be able to read through the proposal at your leisure and either leave comments in there or pursue that discussion elsewhere. So that's kind of the overview.
I would also just like to jump in that there are some other proposals in issues on the Helm repository. It doesn't mean that they are either negated or something else. A lot of this is kind of in addition to that. For example, there's a bunch of talk about changing indexes and stuff like that. That's kind of a tangential discussion to this, but it's not like those things are off the board for Helm 3 for anybody who's wondering.
Is there any formal parameter spec as part of the proposal? Like something that would identify what all the parameters to a chart are and descriptions of the parameters and the types and things like that would be machine readable?
Yes. Is that not, I guess that was not one of the things we went over, Matt. That is in there somewhere.
It's in there, yeah.
It's part of the new, when he was going over the different parts of a chart. Now, I believe the proposal is a JSON schema file that documented that. It's not perfect, but a lot of tools work with JSON schema, so we wanted to try and shoot for that first because of the ecosystem around it.
Yeah, JSON schema seems reasonable.
I should add that on that top level.
Yeah, so we got about 10 minutes to this meeting, so I'm not sure how it would be best to spend this time. Maybe to just talk about next steps with this, or how to get more information, or maybe talk about follow-up discussions to this rather than jump into specific questions first. An initial thought for a next step would be to maybe figure out how to split this up into smaller proposals. I think that this covers the whole gamut, and even just running through, you kind of identified some sections that could be broken off. For example, the push stuff that with that Josh had been looking at. Maybe we could break that out into like a separate looking proposal and maybe try to figure out some way to slice and dice this thing just so it's a little bit more consumable, because most people that work on Helm only work on a certain section of it, because it's going to impact charts, it's going to impact repositories, it's going to impact plugins. So each of these different areas, I think, could be broken off into smaller subsets, and then those parts could be, for the most part, worked on independently.
There had been a proposal that this all go into the same location that the user stories goes into. Is that kind of what we're thinking? If we're going to break it apart, it'd be nice to know kind of what our target destination is.
Yeah, I almost wonder, because this is something that I was really, really interested in for the Helm Dev Summit, was where do we want to put all these proposals in the doc? Like, do we want to make a enhancement proposal documentation for saying what the current system is, why we're changing it to here, or why are we considering changing those? So do we want to have that in like the Helm community stuff, or do we want to have that in the documentation as enhancement proposals for things that we can talk about, champion them in the Slack channel and whatnot, and have discussions around those ideas?
Or should these also go in as different issues for the different areas where it can be an individual issue? Like the push command, right? That could just be.
Could break it out into milestones, Karina, like in GitHub if we do that, because then we can target like a specific milestone for those features. We'll still have like a Helm 3 milestone, but maybe it might be a way to do that so we could track all the individual like feature and issue things we open to track to like implement those things underneath it.
I think that would be a good idea farther along, but since right now it's just this is the initial kickoff. This is just like a brainstorming dump. I don't know if I necessarily want to assign it to a milestone when it's not even something necessarily agreed on is the right approach.
Should we move it to issues?
An initial brain dump, and this is a thought process, and I saw a couple hands go up.
Is the development going to happen in the existing Helm repo or in a different location?
I think it depends on how extremely different it is. I'd imagine it just be in the same repo.
Yeah, I think that the proposals, in my opinion, should go in the Helm repo itself, for where we keep them at and discuss them.
Yeah, Brian, I would expect it probably happens in the existing Helm repo, although we haven't discussed it yet. we already use branches for minor versions such as 2.8, 2.7, and then we release patch releases off of those. It probably wouldn't be unreasonable for us to now have a release 2 branch, and so we can keep iterating on that to support version 2. We'll master, for example, switch to version 3. Something like that wouldn't be unheard of, and then we keep everything in the same place. We haven't talked about it, but that's kind of had been what I thought we'd probably end up doing, but we really don't know yet.
Yeah, this is the first public discussion we've really had at this sort of detail. So,
I'm also a fan of splitting it up, Adam, and I think it'd be good because then we can
looking
kind
at
of
the proposal.
Yeah, splitting up like slicing and dicing it in some sort of way, because then we can kind of split it out and we can have the core maintainers kind of take lead of whichever section either interests them or they'd like to help out with, and any of the community members who would also like to kind of head that up, and they can kind of, that way, like, we don't all have to come back to everybody here to discuss something. We can just kind of define who's in charge of that component, kind of go forward with it.
Right,
So,
and I'm just not quite sure at what level we should split it up, just because right now I think it's best looked at as a single whole.
So,
Yeah,
so how about this? Can we take what we have now, move it as a document into the community repo with maybe just a note describing what this is at the top and what's going to happen here? And then we could take parts of it and start moving them off into issues. And when we do that next to the heading for it, for example, we could link off to the issue. And then in the issue, we could link back here to provide the full context. But then we could have proposal issues. We could move into the next major, and then we could look at maybe scheduling them or what we want to do from there. But we've got a tracking point for individual discussion on that particular thing with traceability back to the main.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, was having it be something a little bit more organic like that. Like, as certain sections become more concrete, then we can break them out and into different sections, or we can, if it's a smaller thing, link to a specific issue that we can track, or if it's a bigger section, actually have another document maybe that can explore a little bit more, and we can have more discussion around it, and then from there break off to discussions or issues from that.
So in bite-sized chunks, is anybody opposed to putting this in community? Is anybody opposed to putting this in as an actual document and not an issue?
I'd actually prefer it.
That sounds easier.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
Document.
Is anybody opposed to me putting it in as an entire document and then we can gradually split it off?
I definitely want that.
Yeah.
And you self-assigned. Yes.
I think that's the way to go too, because then folks can also make sure that all of the pieces mesh together to form the big document, and we're not sort of dropping certain pieces on the floor. So.
Yeah.
It might be nice to break it up how you have in the proposal, though. I think it's pretty nice. I don't know if it means different MD per thing or what, but.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way I'm sort of mentally envisioning it is we drop it in, I drop it in, since I'm volunteering to do this part, as one big whole, and then we gradually break it down until basically the document that I have today is just the table of contents and an abstract that points to all of the specific ones.
Yep.
That way we can get focused in on various aspects, and I'll volunteer to kind of be the Sherpa for the document and make sure that the chunks are
okay.
Cohesive and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then I can start on the Helm push thing on my own, and then PR to remove it from.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, great. Okay, we're right up to the hour. Is there anything else? Any burning desires anybody has?
Hey, so I actually wanted to give a quick demo. It's too late, but Chart Museum can do multi-tenancy now. So you can actually run one process and have unlimited chart repos that you can use with Helm CLI. So pretty cool stuff. Yeah, Nick's, it's basically the envisionment that Nikhil had at Helm Summit. So it's pretty fun.
Quick question on that, if I may.
Go ahead.
It looks like from the instructions I saw, you have to pre-create directories for all of your orgs.
Yeah, so that's just for now. We're working on how you can uh, do a curl push operation and get your chart to the right location in the backend. But yeah, right now it's all read only. It's just for the index YAML part. Um, it's not ready for prime time. I just wanted to let you guys know that that has started, and it's going pretty well. And we're also talking about adding JWT authorization stuff. So very similar to Docker registry, where some auth source tells you you're able to do these things and you can do these things.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah. If you want to give a demo next week, we can.
Yeah. It'll
Well,
probably be in
sometime.
a better state then anyway. So.
Okay. Yeah. And then the other thing for next week we might want to discuss is how we want to move forward with any of these discussions with the Helm 3 proposal, if we just want to keep them ad hoc in the issue, or if we want to set aside a separate meeting for meeting time or extend meeting times, or say like the last 15 minutes is any discussion on Helm 3 proposal stuff that we're working on. So maybe just think about that this week. If you have any ideas, let's talk about that next week.
I also have just one question here, and it comes back to Brian's. Where are we going to do development, and when are we going to set up whatever structure we need to do that?
We're not to any hard deadlines right now. I think that I want to make sure that we get the requirements correct before we set ourselves to a hard deadline for start or setting up the infrastructure for that. I don't know. That's just my opinion, but
I would say when all the disparate parts that we're going to break off here are in a ready and approved state with requirements.
Are there any parts in particular that need help, more contributors?
The current piece that's most undefined as far as our relation to the larger community is going to be that chart.yaml format and whether or not what the direction is going to go on application metadata in cluster, because I know there are several existing initiatives, and this is one of those where I don't want to stall the entire Helm 3 initiative because we're waiting for somebody. But if we've got clear lines of connection with this and another proposal out there, it would be good to figure out how we can just kind of make that happen right away. The other...
Yeah, so Kin is the best person to stay in contact with about that.
And we've talked to him a few times, and I think that's he seems to be the one who's kind of coalescing all the work around him.
Matt, he's not only coalescing it, but I'm also now an owner and approver on it. So unfortunately, I'm the link. So blame me for anything.
All right, we have an in. We have a guy on the inside.
Also, Adnan is an owner and approver on it as well, whether he knew it or not.
I did not, but I know now.
The other big section that remains largely undefined is the one that Josh knows about, right? We want to make sure we get the push semantic nailed down, but that's kind of a known quantity, or at least we know who to point the finger to. So those are the two that are the least defined currently on the spec.
Yeah, I can start talking to people like Jimmy and Kush from JFrog, and I don't. The thing I worry is that the people that are talking about it are the people who have a server side thing going. So I just want to make sure like Matt Farina and people like that are keeping their eye on it so it's not getting out of control.
Yeah, so just so anybody doesn't know this, with the push, a lot of it comes down to not just the push and the fetch, but also the indexing and searching. And where does that happen? Does it happen server side or client side? And of course, there's a big push to do server side, and other folks want, because if it's server side, then you exclude things like object storage because they can't have server side search, right? Then there's also, how do you search across multiple repositories at once, right? If I've got private, stable, and incubator, how do I search against all of them at the same time without accidentally leaking information to one I shouldn't have? Like if I meant to find something in my private repository, I don't even want that search to go to a public one, right? And so there's complexities here on information leakage and stuff, and that's where some of the discussion has been. What's the right way to go? And there is no way to make everybody happy at the moment, so we're trying to figure out what the best way is. for it anyway.
It could be the case that maybe the code in Chart Museum that pushes to object storage is taken out and baked into Helm for push, and then is also used on the back end. I don't know. I'm going to bring up a bunch of stuff in the community repo.
All right, great. And we're a little over 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, so
We got volunteered. I volunteered to lead next week, and Nick volunteered to take notes next week. What else do we need?
do we have a Sherpa?
I could Sherpa.
We have our Sherpa.
So sorry, that was Butcher. You wanted to do notes or lead?
I'll lead. Nick
I'll do notes.
Okay.
And again, thank you all for all the comments you left on that proposal. It's been very helpful. It's exciting to see it kind of coalesce well.
Awesome. With that, thanks everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
See ya.
See ya.
Thank you.